Okay, this is about how to violate the conservation of energy. If you watch a standard physics video on the absorption and emission of light, they'll say that the conservation of energy is maintained, and this is very important. But what they're not pointing out is that Heisenberg discovered that the absorption spectrum of light is due to noncommutative frequency. And as Basil J. Hiley explains, this means that there's that time doesn't exist in a linear measurement. The noncommutative frequency is non-local before linear space-time in relativity. And so this is called the unfolding or enfolding parameter, and essentially it's the non-commutative or inverse exponentials of the frequency that have to be multiplied together in order to create the position of the particle, whether it's an electron or an atom or light, and so the Planck's constant assumes a symmetric time as measured by a second, but in fact this is only due to relying on h bar, which is the reduced value of Planck's constant as a symmetrical sphere for pi over 4, when in fact the frequency and time of the light is actually has gravitational mass from this non-locality that de Broglie realized. So when what Richard Feynman did was that he covered up the non-commutativity, just like Dirac covered up the non-commutativity. And this is what mass renormalization means, is he's assuming the mass slightly changes. But as Louis de Broglie in 1960 explained, is that actually the rest mass is due to this quantum potential from the future as a time reverse signal with the negative frequency. And so the de Broglie-Bohm model that's non-local, it explicitly violates the conservation of momentum. And you're doing that in what's called the configuration space as pure frequency. And so in pure frequency, the time is overlapping with the future and the past overlapping. And what happens is then the Max Born realized that Heisenberg had discovered matrices math. And so the matrices math, it relies on the cross product or the diagonal, the what's called the inner automorphism, which is the multiplication of the 2 by 2 matrices using the imaginary number. So you have a negative frequency that you're subtracting, but then you're also having to square them. And when you square it, then the rest of the matrix cancels out as zeros. And so all you get is this trajectory of the particle as the cross product, as the diagonal of the matrices. and that's the actual origin of the probabilities. And so you don't even have to use any wave function probabilities because it's based on what Heisenberg called transition frequency. And so instead of using time as a distinct location of wavelength, you're just relying on the time being a non-local fundamental time. So it's a process due to these transition frequencies. But so the inverse exponential is inherently non-commutative, and before there's any 0 point in space-time with linear time. So this is how the non-local process works, and Basil J. Hiley is emphasizing that it's not action at a distance because distance as wavelength doesn't exist yet. It's just a pure frequency, non-commutative frequency with no linear time in space-time existing yet. So you only get the linear time as a position is when you square the differences in the frequency. And what this does is it covers up the Poisson bracket. You have the uncertainty relations due to this non-commutativity being covered up. So as Basil J. Hiley points out, is that you actually have the Jordan product, which is the non-commutative product that creates the amplitude from the quantum potential energy. And so this is what Pascual Jordan realized, but it wasn't corroborated until Pauli discovered spin, and then Dirac introduced the relativistic quantum model. So the actual mean average relies on this non-local, non-commutative process that's going on all the time behind the scene before matter actually exists. And it's just a pure non-commutative frequency realm. And so this is what Alain Kahn calls 2-3 infinity, because it's also the truth of music theory. You can show that the Pythagorean comma of music theory is actually the same inverse exponentials of the non-commutative matrices. And so Basil J. Hiley is actually proving this with using the weak measurement experiments, so they can actually prove experimentally using matter that it originates out of this modular momentum with the negative frequency due to the negative I value that you're subtracting before you square it. So this was David Bohm's big point, is that you don't have to use the probability because you can actually map out the overlapping time as this algebraic transition frequency process that Heisenberg first discovered. And this is Alain Kahn's big point also, is that before you have any observation of a particle, you have this non-commutative cycle that's always in the background because it's non-local. And this is what Roger Penrose calls proto-consciousness. And it's like thought is pure algebra without any content. It's just pure form. But it's considered formless because it's before matter exists. So that's how you violate the conservation of energy, and you can do that through meditation by understanding that secret